Hello, this is Talking Next at Classical Next, and my guest is Peter Wiegold. He's composer and conductor and head of Institute of Composition and Club Wiegold in London.
Yep.
What do you think about borders between different kinds of music, like pop music, classical music?
I think they're melting fast. My students at my university will come in and they'll be interested in all sorts of rock music, all sorts of jazz, classical music, modern music. So and particularly world music. So I think the borders are out there, they're melting fast. And maybe audiences aren't quite moving fast across, but practitioners are. So I know a traditional Korean player who improvises with free jazz musicians in New York, goes back to Korea and plays in the court orchestra. That's the world now.
And do you think, aside of this, what's also next in classical music or in composition or music in the future?
We were talking about that in the session we've just had. Clearly what we've had is the liberation of sound with John Cage and Stockhausen. You can use any sound in music now, the sound of water, the sound of a door, everything an instrument can do. So we're past that, and that's a great gift in a way. That period opened up sound. So we can work, and there are lots of people looking backwards, of course, but also I think one of the biggest things that's happening is practice is changing. There's more free improvisers working with Koreans, working with classical composers. There's more improvisation, there's more collaboration. Of course, a lot of work with film and live electronics. And that changes the relationship between people. So the conductor may be a creative director, not a conductor. He may work creatively with the musicians, as well as give them the signals. So my feeling is the most radical things that are happening now are as much to do with the way we do it as inventing new sounds. We've kind of got all the sounds, but we are inventing new ways of making them. And I think it fits the modern world. You know, children who grow up now expect to make decisions. They don't just look to authority figures for every answer. They expect to make their world. So it fits with young people and the way people are emerging, that they should be, when they practice music, they should be always part of making of it as well as delivery of it or something.
So, and what do you think are the dangers of this development?
Well, the dangers are self-indulgence, obviously. The dangers are the loss of contact, because if you all study the same counterpoint, you all study Debussy in the same way, then of course you have shared insight. But if one project is here, one project is here, one project is here, there's not the same enclosed insight that you can bring in education or indeed in audiences. So the dangers are things being one-off, things being local and not linked to the depth of a tradition. But I think we have to ride that. We have to make the links and create situations like I try and do in my club, where just to say about the club, my band plays, then the guest plays, then we play together. So you have, as it were, our tradition, their tradition, then something together. So to try and make constructions that celebrate the roots and also do new things rather than just the roots or just the new things.
What is your advice for young composers or artists nowadays?
The advice is always the same: to listen to everything, to do as much as you can, to not think that you sit at home as a magician and people will come and find you. Go to things, network, make relationships, find young performers and create ensembles with them. Find a bar in a pub and put on concerts. So it's to be entrepreneurial, I think. What I say to my students is that I don't care what they like. I'm not interested in what they like. I'm interested in what they understand. How does the music work? How's the bass line different in Monteverdi or the Beatles? How was it made? Was it a composer? Was it a tradition? Was it a rock group collaborating? And then what does that tell you about the culture it comes from? About traditional Korea or the blues in south of the States or counterpoint in Vienna. So I think people have to understand how music's made, how it works, how it's made in its process and what it says about the culture. And they need to embrace that. They need to think about ancient Chinese music and also to think about Stockhausen and to think about Bach.
So networking, what do you think about an event like the Classical Next?
I think it's a marvellous thing because it brings the industry here, clearly the trade, the publishers, the record companies, but it also brings artists and a discussion of the future. I think it's a really, really important forum because classical music can be taken by people in a much too safe a way. We know classical music. And if you think, for example, of China and the Middle East, They're building opera houses. They're inventing orchestras. But they're basing it on a model that's Salzburg in the 19th century. So across China they're building opera houses, but they expect to put on 19th century opera, which tells us something about what they think classical music is. So I think we need to tell the whole story of classical music right up to the 21st century, and to know that it's always changed fast, and encourage people who take it up, whether it's in South America or China or Middle East, to work with it in a creative, ongoing way, not to box it into this Central European civilized culture that they like to think they can take off the shelf. I think it's quite useful, helpful to see what people from the outside see, and they see that the Salzburg box of chocolates on the shelf, and we need to get them the sense of the breadth of what classical music has been and continues to be.
Well, Peter Wiegold, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Nice to talk.
Have a good time here in Vienna.
I will.
Thank you.